Welcome to Talk Purpose and Truth with Eden and Kim, shifting you into higher consciousness, the show that elevates, uplifts, and encourages listeners to grow, heal, awaken, and evolve. Eden and Kim include bold topics, special interviews with inspiring guests, intuitive readings, channeled messages from beyond, including celebrities, hot topics to expand your awareness, and time for questions from the audience. Tune in for unprecedented truth, authenticity, on-purpose discussions, and magical moments.
Our first in-studio guest in a long time, and it's Erin Cottrell. She is an award-winning actress, voiceover artist, and mother, and cares deeply about empowering women and young girls, as well as providing arts education for the at-risk youth of LA. For over a decade, she taught dance, Shakespeare, and photography for the nonprofit City Hearts Kids Say Yes to the Arts, and she's best known for her portrayal of Missy LaHoy in the Love Comes Softly series on Hallmark. She's been in dozens of TV shows, miniseries, and films, including NCIS, ER, Medium, Cold Case, Legally Blonde 2, and was Caroline Ingalls in ABC's remake of Little House on the Prairie. More recently, she could be seen with Ray Liotta and Ashley Judd in The Identical, as well as with Ed Asner in The Pacific Edge. Her joy for voiceover work is palpable, and she's loved creating characters for over a dozen video games, most recently Final Fantasy VII Remake, which was just released. Her voice has also lent itself to books, commercials, and is even the English announcer at Disneyland Shanghai. A graduate of UNC Chapel Hill with a BA in drama, she also studied Shakespeare at the Young Vic in London. And I met her long ago through one of my friends, one of our dear friends, Pina DeRosa, and she was an interview on my confidence course, which is still available online. And we've been a part of books and events together, so it's great to see you again, and welcome, Erin.
Thank you so much. It's so good to see you too, and live and in person.
Right?
So good to be a part of this.
So much more appreciative than we ever were before.
It's
right?
That's so true. Before we took it for granted.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I took things for granted, like some things, I guess, but it's just this extra level of appreciation for everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
But we didn't think we would never be able to do this again.
Right.
In the studio.
The most simple things.
I know. Yeah.
Well, today I was cracking up because my teenage daughter Noella was like, "Oh, Mom, I'm tired. Can I do online school today?" And I started laughing because she's been in person again.
Uh-huh.
And I said, "You were begging to go in person." And now it's like, oh, it's easier to be online. So I think people are flip-flopping on certain things as well. So
yeah. It's all an adjustment.
yeah.
So let's talk.
Yeah.
Let's ask some questions. Erin, tell us more about who you are and what you do and how did you get on this path?
There's so many paths. Like the acting path?
Acting path,
The
yes.
acting path. My mom is a choreographer and a dance teacher, so when I was little, I grew up in musical theater, which was like the most joyous thing in the world. And I just absolutely love that. So I went to school for theater. I loved doing musicals. I thought I'm gonna do musical theater for the rest of my life, and then started doing classical theater. Then I started auditioning for soap operas, and suddenly like took this TV turn because it was I don't know, a different kind of fun and more money, and just kind of went down that path in New York, and then came out to LA, and I've been doing TV and film for a long time. Then I had my daughter, who is 7, and when that happened, I wanted to be close to her, so I kind of pivoted into voiceover. It was something I always really loved doing when I would do ADR for the TV shows and films that I would do. I would put the headset on and be like, wait a second, this feels like my life. This feels right. And so when my daughter was born, my husband actually built a sound booth in our house, in our apartment.
Nice.
And it allowed me to care for my young baby and then audition and record things from home. And so that kind of shifted and took this whole other path, and it's been like 9 solid years, almost 10 years really of doing that. And that's like taken on its own life.
And you don't have to be away.
No, it was the nicest. It was a gift I didn't know I was getting at the time. You know, I thought it was just, I was kind of following the doors that were opening for me. But as I did it, I realized this is something that I really love. So
That's so cool.
It's-
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think most actors will pursue it because they already knew that they wanted it. But you kind of just let it come to you.
yeah. It was really strange, and there are voiceover things I didn't know, like channels I didn't know were possible, like voice match. I do a lot of voice match too, which is you know, when a celebrity is not available to do their own ADR, if you can mimic their voice, then you can go in and just do their ADR for them, and then you get paid as if you're in the film.
That's amazing. So you
Oh,
can,
that's like
your voice changes all different ways.
Yes, yeah, it can. So that's led me into strange, like beautiful situations. There was a film with Charlize Theron where she was doing a South African, her own South African accent, that was written and directed by Sean Penn. And she wasn't available to do all this narration, and he needed somebody to lay the track down that could sound like her.
You do, kind of.
so
Kind
do
of.
it. Do a little piece.
Oh,
so we
but
can
I'm
hear.
my South African is horrible, but I could mimic her.
Uh-huh.
And so he brought me into the studio with just him. It was me and Sean
Oh,
Penn
nice.
for about 5 hours, staring at a huge screen, and he would write the narration for the film and have me do it to time for the scenes that were already there to see if it would work. And so I laid that whole track down for Charlize, and then she went in and did it to the timing of that, so she didn't have to do all that like deep work with Sean. But in the meantime, you know, Sean's having a
You're hanging with Sean and getting paid.
yeah, and he's having a vodka, and we're figuring out the stuff, and I was like, how did I get in this magical room?
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
that's so cool.
Like crazy witches, and like in Final Fantasy VII, this reboot, I'm playing this woman Scarlet, who is like dominatrix.
Oh.
It's just like it's a whole new angle.
Wow, does your husband like that one?
So, no, he hasn't seen it. He's not so much of a gamer. It's funny to you know, people will say like, oh, what did you think of it? And unless you have like a PS5 and sit down and play the game, you never see the work that you do. You just don't.
They don't send you the actual game.
No. I guess they could.
They could,
but
yeah.
yeah.
You have to play the game with yourself in it. That's interesting. Well, on another totally opposite note, you played Carolyn in the miniseries of Laura Ingalls Wilder's Little House on the Prairie. I grew up reading that, watching it. This was the ABC remake of it. What was it like playing such an iconic role and being in something that really shows life in the 1800s?
Well, to be fair, I lived in the 1800s for like a solid 6 years of my life.
Right.
So I did Little House on the Prairie. I shot that in Canada for about 6 months. And then right when that was coming out, Michael Landon Jr. was doing this Hallmark series. The strange thing was they hadn't even seen the Little House stuff. This is kind of an interesting story. So this series began with Katherine Heigl and January Jones playing mother and then daughter as she grew up. And January Jones did the first one, and then I don't know if she wasn't able to or got fired. I don't know what happened, but was not able to continue playing that character. And so I auditioned for a Blackbeard the Pirate miniseries, totally separate. And it came down between me and Jessica Chastain for this thing. Right? This was pre-Jessica Chastain as Jessica Chastain, but she and I used to audition against each other. And they cast her in that, and they said, Erin, it'd be good to replace January Jones and put her in this thing. And she just got one thing, and I turned it into 5 movies. And I was like, yeah, I won. No, I'm so sorry. She's Jessica Chastain, and she became what she is. But at the time, it felt really lucky. So I ended up doing this series. And yeah, so it was 1880s for Little House on the Prairie, and then 1880s for this Love Comes Softly series. And that was like 5 films over several years that we did. And it's cool. I have a separate set of skills no one else has, like milking cows and churning butter and driving and tasting horses.
Right.
So you actually had to do those.
Yeah. Especially for Little House, because they shot it. They tried to be as specific to the books as they could. So we're out in the tundra in Canada, you know, when they cross the frozen river in Little House on the Prairie. We were legitimately crossing this gigantic frozen reservoir for days. We were just out there for days, and I had to learn how to drive the horses on the ice and ride the horses through all sorts of inclement weather as we were doing that stuff too. So that was like my first really big TV show, especially a show you carry, not just like a guest star. And so, you know, they don't put any makeup on you. You have to look like you're in this thing. So I was like, if I can get through this, I can kind of get through anything. Wow. No, it was like anything after that, I was like, oh, I get to wear pants? This is amazing, you know? So.
Right. Well, and your mind doesn't know the difference between what's being portrayed and what's real sometimes, so you probably had some effects affect you.
That is so so true on so many levels, and I think so many actors go a little bit nuts because to be, really inside of that, you really do, you shift your energy in a way. And if you're doing a comedy, you're doing something like that, how lovely for your soul.
Right.
And if you have to be depressed and crazy all the time, I know our friend Brianna has said this before, but she's played crazy people. She's like, how do I shape this? When
And
it's
she
over?
played crazy.
And she's played some crazy.
She was on
Yes.
our show, for
Yeah.
Brianna Brown,
Yeah.
for those listening, if you
Yeah.
want to go
Yes.
back and listen.
And watch her on General Hospital.
Yes, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, and that's, I think the craziest, I did play one character on Medium where I had to actually drown my own child.
Oh.
And that was rough, but I didn't have a kid at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I'd be able to do that now, to go there.
Yeah.
I warned my friends who had children, I was like, please don't watch this episode, this is really traumatic. But it stays in you gotta exercise it.
Yeah. Oof.
I think it's an outlet too, though, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And you sometimes get to exercise things you don't have the safety to exercise in your own life.
Mm-hmm.
So for sure. That's why we do it, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
That's
that's the
nice.
creative element.
Not the
of it.
fame.
No, are you kidding me? No.
Okay, so now we're gonna switch gears. So you're also a wife and a mom and very passionate about postpartum burnout and overall relationship health as well. Can you talk about this for other moms out there?
Oh, yeah. So like I said, I didn't sleep for about 2.5 years with my child, and I don't feel like I specifically experienced postpartum depression in the sense that a lot of people do, but the anxiety of it, I don't think I recognized as a postpartum thing. I think I felt anxiety just as I must keep this person alive. I must keep this person alive.
I can relate.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
The one sitting right there.
Yeah.
The audience can't see. My daughter's here. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I felt.
It's a compulsion. I think it starts to, create a loop in your head a little bit about it, and I would get anxious about stuff. My husband would look at me like I was crazy. Like even just holding my daughter on our balcony, just holding her anywhere close to the edge made my heart race in ways. And even now, she is 7 years old and she's 4'7". She's gigantic. She's up to here on me. And if she's by a glass side, at the mall that's gonna drop over into
I
a
see that
secondary
too.
thing. My heart, and I stand in between her and the thing. What is that? Seriously, my husband looks at me like I'm nuts, but it is. I really think it's a biological. It's
an
inside
instinct.
of us. It's an instinct, and I firmly believe, and I believe that science is also backing this up. You also still have parts of their DNA inside of you, and there are mirror neurons that you are experiencing what's going on. You are feeling the necessity to save them in the way you would try to save your own self sometimes, or even for me, even more so. As a mom, I would do whatever I could to save her. So I definitely feel like the postpartum aspect manifests in that kind of anxiety. So I'm generally not like an anxious person about other stuff. Traffic on the way here, I'm like, oh, this sucks, but also, what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
So that, and then the necessity of sleep. I realized what happens to you when you don't sleep.
Yeah.
And how important that is. And some kids sleep great, and my daughter just didn't. And one of our next door neighbors is one of the foremost sleep trainers in the country, and she couldn't.
Oh.
We
Oh,
just
wow.
didn't.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I just attribute that to her personality. Her brain is always going. She's super vibrant and stuff. But the trade-off was 2 years of not sleeping.
Making you more anxious.
Yeah.
Yeah, it absolutely leads to that. Yeah. And then if you're not taking care of yourself because you're exhausted all during the day, it was like coffee and what kind of food can fuel me just to get to the next hour. And then you go into that zombie thing. Have you ever heard that? The zombie, the mom zombie.
Oh.
That's funny.
It's a nighttime thing where because you've been taking care of another person all day, you finally have time to yourself. And even though you're exhausted, you're like, I'm gonna watch one more episode. Or I'm gonna scroll through Instagram
Until
for
3
another
a.m.
20 minutes until 3 a.m. Because it's the only time you've been free.
Yeah. And you don't want anyone to touch you.
Yes, do not touch my mom, nobody. Do not touch me, and also just the quiet. Sometimes you don't feel responsible at that time of night, so that's real, and I still do that. My kid is 7, but definitely when she was really little. I
Yeah.
tried to seek out that alone time.
Right, I think a lot of moms can relate to this.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. So I know, like Eden and I, and we talk about this a lot on our show, you're about channeling wisdom from a higher place, meditation, active visualization. How has this changed your life recently?
So, it's really changed my life recently. So since January, this whole pandemic really just like shook everything up. I think for a lot of people, it definitely did in my house. And it got to a boiling point where I was like, this is not sustainable. There was too much stress. And I started meditating in a very different way in January. And I read, I'm actually not completely finished because I'm taking my time with it, but Joe Dispenza's book, Becoming Supernatural. Have you read? Okay.
Haven't read, but I know him.
Yeah.
He's good.
You know him, he's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so, I also come from, my father was a science teacher, so I love to marry the science with the spiritual aspect of it. Now, full disclosure, my mom is a medium.
Oh,
Oh,
Eden's a medium.
Oh, well, there you go.
Oh.
So that's in our family, and it's something that I will go there 100% with her. It's something she and I kind of discovered together. But my father was a physics and chemistry teacher, so, but he's also had 3 near-death experiences. The first one when I was 16, so that shaped my spiritual beliefs because he's like, oh, I'm not afraid of death, and here's what happened to me. And so being able to kind of walk into my adulthood feeling that already made me go, okay, yeah, cool, I accept all of these things. So Becoming Supernatural was great because Joe brings in a lot of science elements and into the tested meditative aspects of all of his people that come to these seminars. He's like, look at these pictures, this is how your brain changes. This is what happens chemically when you are operating at a higher frequency. You're actually activating, there's like your pineal gland does something different, and this is how the crystals that are calcified here almost act like an antenna. Like it's from a scientific standpoint of like, this is how you are actively pulling in information in a different way. And I think it's the first time I ever read it where it was explained to me from a place of, this makes physical sense to me, not just kind of esoteric sense.
Wow. What was it like with your mom, growing up with your mom as a medium?
So she didn't actually discover it until I was in Nashville in 2012.
Oh, wow.
So I was a full adult, and she was really kind of, it's also very scary for her. I feel bad just kind of speaking about her in this way, but I'm sure she'll be fine. But it's frightening when it first happens because you don't know how much to trust it, right? I don't know.
You don't have to tell me, yes.
Okay, yeah. So it's hard because we all experience intuition through. I think I don't want to be sexist in this, but like I think women are a little more in tune with it, and I think throughout our lives we feel it, but we don't have a name for it, and it kind of comes in these interesting ways, and they show up as synchronicities, or this comes to you and you're like, do I shake this off, or was that real? But when it happens and it affects somebody else, and it helps somebody else,
Right.
that's when you go, oh, I should pay attention to this.
Validation.
It's validation, and it's also, it's like a deeper calling. It's something you feel.
You're speaking my life.
Yay!
That's why I started doing it.
Yes, tell me.
Someone came to me, well, long story, but it was someone I didn't know,
Yeah.
connected to my sister, asking me to do this, and I did it most of my life, but it's because my grandma did it, so I knew I had something, but I never really played with it.
Yeah.
But she came to me and asked me to do it, and I thought it was ridiculous. But I tried, and then it turned out that it helped her so tremendously. It actually helped her get out of depression. So it was, in that moment, I was thinking, this is my calling. I have to do this.
And now that's what she does.
Yeah.
Well, how amazing that we're all
Yeah.
sitting here together.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Hook me up with your mom. I want to talk to her.
Absolutely, I absolutely will. And it's interesting too how, and she also teaches musical theater. She teaches kids, and that's like also part of her thing. But it's interesting how COVID kind of made her, as we all retreated in this. She's like, I don't know if I can feel it. I think a lot of the inspiration that we were feeling from connecting with each other on the outside when we were isolated, I think got really stilted. I definitely felt that from a creative standpoint too. And then when we came out, and I started doing this meditation gesturing here because that's where the book is, but things started coming to me. Things that I didn't, not like images this way, but literal jobs started coming to me. So as I started to sit and meditate and really try to raise my vibration, I felt like all of a sudden I got that audiobook job of, you look tired happened, and then I got a phone call from one of the producers of The Identical, just out of nowhere, said, hey, I'm directing this movie in LA. We originally cast it pre-COVID, and now the woman that was gonna play one of the leads is unavailable. I just happened to open up Instagram and I saw your picture and thought, oh, you'd be perfect for this.
Oh, that's not just
Was that the horror movie?
That was the horror movie I just shot in
okay.
March, and this was like 5 days prior. While in meditation, I heard you need a bigger reach. You need to talk to more people. Please start posting more things. Because I'm not on social media. I'm not a social media person. I have zero followers. Like it's not been my thing. But I just started putting out there what I thought, and then he's like, oh yeah, I opened it up and there you were, and I thought, here, can you come to this movie? And do you want to know the name of the movie? Manifest. That's the name.
Oh my.
And you were on the show Medium.
And I was on the show Medium. Yeah. And I was on the very last episode of Noah Wiley's on ER, like his very last one, and one of my best friends married him.
Oh, okay,
Oh my
see,
gosh.
like,
Yeah, just this
no accidents.
I mean, that is whatever it is, but I was a giant fan of that show and
Yeah.
desperately wanted to be on it, and then when I found myself inside of it, I was like, oh man, this is like a total dream come true. It was super cool.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, the connecting thing, it's so crazy because it's the first time I'm doing a women's circle event like in a few days, and it just feels almost weird because it's been like a year and a half, I think, since I was in person with a group, and so it'll be nice when it becomes a flow again.
And I think it'll be powerful to feel everybody around
Right.
you.
I think it'll be interesting to watch people because, well, you'll be there, Eden and Skylar. But it'll be like just people processing it because we all look at everything different now,
Yeah, to see the filters that we have now. Yeah, that'll be really interesting. I was just it's my daughter's last day of school, and I was just at the beach with a bunch of first graders, and they were all in class together and unable to be close to one another for the last 3 months.
Uh-huh.
And then they were there at the beach just today, and they were able to chase each other and be in the water together and like actually hug each other for the first time. And all the parents were there, and I wanted to cry. It was beautiful to see all these kids just experience each other fully for the first time.
Right.
Oh my gosh! And that's what we're all gonna do, I think.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
Yes, I know.
Appreciate people more.
Yeah.
Sure.
Our relationships, everything. So you were on a show, The Big Break OC. Tell us more about this.
That happened during the pandemic. I got a call to say, hey, you want to be a judge on an acting competition show? And it was all online. It was like all Zoom, all during the pandemic. And there was a guy who had kind of shifted careers. He had lost the job he had during the pandemic. He's like, I want to do this with my wife who teaches playwriting. We're going to just do this for some of the students we have and open it up to people across the country. So they opened up auditions just like American Idol kind of, but for actors, for theater actors, and they would post all of their auditions online, like on Instagram, and then people could vote on this thing, and then there would be 2 winners. One would be the popular vote, and one would be a judge pick. And so I was a judge for a couple weeks, and then you go on to Zoom and you talk to the actors who won, and then
cool.
at the end they took like the top 20, I guess, for the winners over the 10 weeks, and they actually put on shows. They put on plays.
Uh-huh.
I didn't feel safe enough to go and direct one of the shows, but they had some other people come in, and then they did it and they filmed them. So then you can actually like watch these shows, and so people came in from all over the country.
Oh, neat. Wow. That is really cool. Well, what about your work with inner city youth? You've done a lot of work with kids in LA, with art. Talk about this and why it's so meaningful.
That was a giant part of my life when I first moved to Los Angeles. Like I said, my mom teaches musical theater, has had a camp and things, and it was one of the jobs I thought, this is something I can do and also continue to audition, and also give back in a way that I felt was good. So I grew up in a dance studio, and then I taught dance for a while, so I went in and I would go into Boyle Heights and teach in an elementary school, the after school program, and I would just jazz and hip hop. Now I would be horrible at these kids. I look at TikTok and I'm like, oh no, past my prime. But at the time it worked, and then we would put on massive shows and stuff. And so for a lot of these kids, it was the first time that their parents were able to see them, in a performative way, and they also, this was also at-risk youth, so there's a massive amount of, gang activity in that neighborhood, and so it gave the kids something else to do and to focus on. And I worked for that nonprofit for like 10 years and had just some amazing things. I have one student who I'm just exceedingly proud of. She just got her master's in, that's how old I am, in social work.
Wow.
Because she came through, she's a dreamer, and she and her two sisters she was brought over here. She was actually born in Mexico, and then her two sisters were born here. And she was the first one to graduate high school, the first one to go to college, the first one to do all of this stuff. And there was a time when she had gotten into college, but she wasn't going to be able to pay for it. And in the New Hollywood, the group that Brianna has, that I've been a part of since its inception, I'm like the oldest member. Not the oldest member, but the longest.
You still look 19.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you. That's not true. Everybody listening. Anyway, so we would donate money and vote on causes to donate. And when my student wrote to me and said, she's like, I am only missing like this little chunk of money, but if I don't have it, I can't start school. And so I brought the cause to the New Hollywood, and I said, this is my student. I had her for years. This is what's going on. She'll be the first one to go to college. Can we please donate to her? And everybody voted, and like hands down, we donated all of our funds to her.
Oh, wow.
That's so special.
She was able to go, and now she has a child, and she's married, and she has her master's, and it's amazing.
For more information on Eden, go to edensustin.com. For more information on Kim, go to kimlifecoach.com. Make sure to follow them on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Talk Purpose and Truth Podcast. If you loved this episode, you'll love every episode. So be sure to subscribe so you don't miss anything. Thank you for listening.